I just started it right now. And if you have any questions, since this is more of a roundtable discussion, you have this Q&A function down there on your screen. I hope at least you all have it there. So feel free to ask questions about the different topics that we are going to discuss. So we are really, really excited to host this event and have a great talk, food for thought for you about these important topics such as diversity, equity, literacy, all in education, and how we can support these issues or these, these topics with the use of technology, especially in English teaching, English as a foreign language or second language teaching. Let me share my screen again because I would like to share something exciting with you. So we decided to do a little giveaway for you. Andrea is an author of many books, and Darko is the CEO and co-founder of BOOKR Class, which is a technological solution for English teachers. And together we decided that Andrea would offer a book for you and Darko would offer a yearly BOOKR Class subscription. All you will have to do is to stay with us until the end of the webinar and then share your main takeaways from this webinar on either Twitter or LinkedIn using the hashtag BOOKRClass4Diversity. And then on Twitter, please tag Andrea and BOOKR Class. And on LinkedIn, please again tag Andrea and BOOKR Kids. My colleagues will send you, yeah, they just did it. They are sharing all the details with you so you can quickly go ahead and follow us. We will give the chance for those two who will watch this recording later. So the deadline for these posts would be Friday, noon Central European time. So welcome everyone again. We are getting more and more. I'm very excited about that. And I would like to welcome our two experts, Andrea and Darko. Let me introduce them shortly, and then of course I will give the floor to them because they are the main addition to today's discussion. So Dr. Andrea Honigtsveld is a professor in the School of Education and Human Services at Molloy College in New York, USA. She teaches doctoral courses related to diversity, social justice, and equity. Before entering the field of teacher education, she was an English as a foreign language teacher in Hungary and an English as a second language teacher in the US and taught Hungarian at New York University. So you can see why we really wanted to have a discussion with her, because her profile is exactly what we need today. She really has experience from the field. And of course, she's also a researcher herself. Her work primarily focuses on effective differentiated strategies and collaborative practices in support of English learners. And the book that we are going to offer for you today, and the latest that she wrote with some other authors, is From Equity Insights to Action. It's here on my screen. From Equity Insights to Action, Critical Strategies for Teaching Multilingual Learners. It was co-authored with researchers Maria Gido, Audrey Cohen, Carrie McDermott Goldman. So this is our first guest, Andrea. And then Darko is the other one, who is the CEO and co-founder of BOOKR Kids, an edtech company creating digital interactive books, and that Tech 5 has chosen as one of the 100 fastest growing European companies. Darko is also a PhD candidate at Corvinus University, Budapest, and the topic of her doctoral dissertation is how digitalization changes reading and learning habits in Generation Z. Darko was also featured on Forbes magazine's Under 30 list. And lastly, me, I'm going to be moderating this discussion today. By education, I'm also related to languages and linguistics. I was studying French and Hungarian as a foreign language, and I really enjoyed teaching Hungarian. And today I am responsible for international partnerships and customer success at BOOKR Class and BOOKR Kids. So this is why I'm very, very honored to be here today with all of you, and especially with Andrea and Darko. So thank you so much for being here, Andrea, Darko.
Thank you for having us.
Hi, everyone.
Great. So based on what I told about you already, I really think that it's no wonder why we decided to invite you to this discussion about diversity, equity, technology, literacy, all this together. And you have a lot in common in your backgrounds and in your work, what you're doing. You're both dedicated to literacy development, equity, and using technology. Just very briefly, I would like to hear about what put you on this track. Andrea?
Well, as you mentioned earlier, I started out as an EFL teacher, English as a foreign language teacher, in the same middle school that I attended earlier as a child. So all my life, I think going back to when I was maybe 5 or 6 years old, I wanted to be a teacher. So teaching was in my career. How I ended up falling in love with English and languages, I actually studied 6 languages. I'm only fluent in 2. I can't pretend that I'm fluent in the others, but languages, language pedagogy, and then focusing on learners, both locally, nationally, and internationally, just has become my passion. So I'm so excited to be here and share more with you today.
Thank you. What about you, Darko? What put you on this track?
First of all, thank you for having me today. I'm very happy that can join this amazing conversation with Andrea, who is one of my role models. So I'm super honored to be here. Thank you so much, Andrea. So actually, I'm grew up with a publisher parents, and being a crazy bookworm, I wanted books to inspire my son, just like other children, because I realized quite early how important it is to experience the love of reading, which can develop so many skills, and I think it's essential. That's why we founded BOOKR Kids with my husband. It was in 2015, so 6 years ago. And right after I have started my PhD studies to gain a deeper insight into reading development and also establish a strong background for my EdTech startup, because I think it's also very important to be authentic and valid on this market. And just like Anna mentioned, that I finished after 6 years my doctorate thesis, so I'm ready to defend it in December. And this is about interactive books as hybrid mediums and how it can help in reading comprehension development.
Amazing, thank you. To tell you the truth, when I was writing the description for this event, I was a bit struggling how to put together diversity, equity, literacy, technology, and why not something else, because all of these are so strong on their own. And I was not sure how to communicate it in a straightforward, very easy to understand way to our audience, our future audience, how these things are connected. I would be very interested to hear how, in your mind, do these 3 subjects connect and become one big topic of discussion? Andrea, what do you think?
I don't think that they can be separated. They are truly intertwined. If you're thinking about the digital world that we live in, it's almost impossible to do anything without having access to digital tools, having digital literacy, understanding how to use the internet, as well as the many amazing tools that are available, both for educational and personal purposes. So I think one participant said that they can't hear, but they now said that they can. So I'm glad that you're able to hear us. So diversity, if you think about whichever part of the world you live in, a population has been diversified wherever we go, whether you are in Central Europe or Asia or in the United States. So we are going to define very soon what diversity really means to us. But diversity also means access and equitable access to resources. And of course, literacy is a gateway to success, to citizenship, to being engaged in everyday activities, as well as economic and professional success. So all of these pieces beautifully fit together in my mind. So thank you for putting them together and for inviting me to share my insights about it.
Thank you. And Darko, what do you think, for you as an entrepreneur and literacy advocate?
Yeah, I agree with Andrea, because I also think that literacy, diversity, equity, and also technology could be the secret formula of the future of education, because this combination can develop critical thinking, creativity, empathy, and these so-called 21st century skills, which helps kids to understand the world and encourage reflection in patterns and models as well, because these are essential skills for network thinking, which is, I think, it's the really important phrase these days.
Diversity and equity comes in many forms in education. We actually received a lot of questions from those who signed up to the webinar. And just if I went through those, I saw many different examples. How do you ladies encounter these in your current professional context? This time, let's start with Darko. How do you as an entrepreneur, an edtech entrepreneur, show diversity in education in your career?
Yeah, or maybe I will start with equity, because equity in education, equity in education requires putting a system in place to ensure that every child has an equal chance for success. And I think this is the key of this whole conversation about equity in education. And that's why we are running free pilot programs to provide BOOKR solution for kids in need. For example, now we are working with Alphas Infantiles in Guatemala, the SOS Children Village, to provide these kids quality educational content and technology to improve their skills. And personally, I'm also visiting quite often the rural areas in Hungary. And you can imagine it's quite heartbreaking to visit schools where nobody had books at home. So imagine a home without books. So it's unrealistic in my life. And yeah, I also think that equity is also closely tied to personalized learning, because it requires understanding students' individual needs and designing educational experiences that will help students to achieve success. So summarizing, like equal chances for success and personalized learning, I think these two.
Yes, and we will go back to technology a bit more later on, but I find it always very fascinating how technology today is sometimes more approachable than just physical books, or how much more natural it is for people to have digital devices than have books at home. And I think this is something many people don't think about. And the first reaction is digital tools or technology. How am I supposed to reach it, or how is it supposed to give equal chances? And we don't think that it might actually give better chances all over the world. Great. And Andrea, what do you encounter in your current professional context?
Well, when I think of diversity, I probably think of just about every dimension of our identity markers. If you think about race, gender, ethnicity, age, language, socioeconomic context, sexual orientation, but also neurodiversity, recognizing that some of these diversity markers are visible and others are not. So if we're working in any kind of educational context, we have highly talented children who need accelerated learning. We have students who are approaching or at grade level. Age and grade appropriate learning is fairly easily accessible and doable for them. And there are other students who have unique learning difficulties or learning challenges or even learning disabilities. Yet we can't look at any child in our classroom or in any other context, if we go beyond the 12th grade into college and adult education, through a deficit model. So when I think about diversity and equity, I think about how to look at every single child individually, or every learner individually, as well as a group of learners, through an asset-based approach. So how can we as professionals, whether you're an educator or you are an entrepreneur who provides amazing resources for us educators, how can we make sure that everybody has access to that and everybody can be successful in their own learning contexts?
Yeah, and really everybody meaning meaning everybody. Like,
Yeah.
All means all. Yes, absolutely.
amazing. And then if we go closer to specific fields, let's say language teaching, because this is what we planned to focus on more. Is there anything else that adds to diversity, specifically in language teaching? Andrea?
Yeah, absolutely. So we have to recognize that many of our language learners, whether they are learning English as a foreign language, English as a second language, or in the European context, sometimes it's called English as an additional language, or it could be any other languages. After all, English is not the only target language. We can have a multilingual approach to enhancing and enriching our linguistic repertoires. We also speak multiple dialects or multiple registers. The way I talk to my children, whether it's in Hungarian or English, is very different than the way I'm talking to you now, or if I am teaching at the college level. So we're switching, we're code switching all the time. And what we need to recognize is just this access to multiple different ways of expressing ourselves, multiple different kinds of communication skills, literacy skills, oracy skills, and how we can help all learners to embrace these different skills.
And then I believe that this would mean that, yes, when you're teaching a language or when you're in a language classroom, that be any language, then you really have to focus on not just the diversity factors that you mentioned before, the different backgrounds and socioeconomics and gender and so on, but we really have to pay attention to engage these students with the different registers and the different situations of life and so on.
And yet another point, if I may add there, is this being really aware of how our learners can see themselves in the curriculum, in the reading materials, so that they can make connections. The brain, especially the multilingual brain, is always seeking patterns, always seeking connections. So for something to be memorable, for something to stick, I need to be able to relate to that. So that's another layer of diversity of what kind of instructional materials are we preparing or presenting to our students. And one, I often cite this recommendation is to make sure that the students can see themselves, their own experiences, their own lives reflected back at them in the materials that they are working with.
Very, very important. Thank you.
And stories can help to accelerate this whole process.
Absolutely, absolutely. The next, something that I would have wanted to ask, and now you're already touching this, like how can a language classroom promote diversity and equity? What are the tools? What is your take? Darko, you started stories. That's one way.
Yeah, so I follow that line, if you don't mind. So I think that storytelling is something familiar in all areas, like culture and backgrounds. It is a shared experience, and stories are something that everyone can relate to, especially children. Just go back. What was your favorite book from your childhood? It's a bedtime story. I'm reading the same books what my mother or my father read to me, and this is also a shared experience. And narratives are engaging and can catch and hold attention. And these are, just Andrea mentioned, memorable and also immersive and can support incidental learning as well. So that's why we are using storytelling as a foundation of BOOKR class. And to not just accelerate the vocabulary acquisition and the grammar acquisition easier, but also to develop this global citizenship, or get more familiar with different stories, to also develop the empathy, for example, as a very important 21st century skills. And we are also focusing on this multicultural content as we developing a library for English teachers and of course for students, because we would like to support all English teachers around the world. And that's why it's really important to use like diverse books and also global standards to provide them quality content materials. And I would like to also add that we are also combining storytelling and technology in the methodology of BOOKR Class, because these very engaging interactive features like animation and gamification and also interaction can also improve the engagement level as well. So it also supports the active learning in the classroom.
Let me ask a quick question about the diverse content. Has it ever happened, and I know the answer, of course, but now everyone else will know too. Has it ever happened that you received feedback about your content and this diversity? And how do people, or how do your readers usually react to the content?
Yeah, feedback, I think it's super important. So we try to collect as much feedback as possible from our teachers. And when we are developing our new stories and just build up the strategy on content production, we need to focus on different countries' needs, curriculums, different cultures' needs, curriculums, just like we have teachers from Arabic countries, but from South Korea as well, and in Brazil. And I can say it's not an easy task to provide like suitable content for everybody. But for example, we are developing now a new feature that teachers can filter the content. But for example, in my country, in Hungary, one of the most famous tale is the Three Little Pig, which is not accurate in an Arabic country, and that's why we need to use technology as a very important tool to filter this content for the students, and also provide like a immediate help for teachers who just don't want to see that content.
Mm-hmm. And I'm sorry, go ahead, Andrea.
That is a really important point that you made, Darko, because the terminology that in the United States we use for this kind of mindful content planning is culturally responsive teaching. You're understanding your audience, you're understanding your students, the context in which your materials are used. Or as a teacher, I understand the composition of my class, and I'm responding intentionally and purposefully to the cultural experiences that the students are bringing with themselves. So that's yet another answer to your previous question on about how do we have to be mindful in the language classroom to promote diversity. So certainly the teacher is bringing one type of diverse experiences, but we also need to be mindful of the diverse experiences of our students. And yet another layer we might not have touched upon yet is the learning trajectory. That in any classroom, as a language teacher, I know students, whether they are young, kindergarten, first grade, really, really young children, or older students, who just pick up the language. They have this natural talent of acquiring communicative skills. They crack the code, they begin to read, and then they devour books. They can just not have enough. And then others who have a different trajectory, they're going to be making steady progress, but you can only accelerate that kind of learning to a certain degree. So what Darko mentioned earlier is, by virtue of creating highly engaging materials, allowing the students to do a lot of self-selection and gamification put in there, interactive opportunities to engage with the content, will help some of the students who might not be on that fast track accelerated learning path.
Andrea, if you don't mind, do you remember any very memorable challenges in your career when you faced a very difficult situation in diversity, or something that you had to solve with your own students?
Well, actually, I do have a couple of those instances. One that really stands out is when I left the United States. I married an American. That's how I ended up in the United States. We actually met in London, and this was way before there were cell phones and iPhones. So we were writing letters, real letters that you put in an envelope, and then you wait 2 weeks, and then 2 weeks the answers. I know that's kind of like how old I am when my now husband and I were corresponding for 6 years before I ended up moving to the United States. Now that's another topic, of course, but when I came to the United States, I experienced this culture shock of being a teacher in the New York City public school system, as opposed to being a teacher in Hungary, where as you enter the classroom, all the students drop everything, all silence, standing up, greeting the teacher in that way. Well, that was not quite like that in the New York City public schools, as you could imagine. But that wasn't the real challenge, because you learn your culturate, you understand the dynamics of a new context. But what was really challenging to me is that I had a large number of Dominican American students, and I did not know anything about the Dominican Republic. So how to get to know who my students were, I discovered Julia Alvarez, who's a Dominican American author living in New York City, and I just could not have enough of her books. So it was actually literature, not professional literature, but literature for enjoyment, that became that entry point to me, that I was able to overcome this cultural divide, that I do not know anything about my students' backgrounds, and why are there so many Dominican Americans in certain pockets in New York City, and just how will I educate myself on this? And I just discovered that one way to educate yourself is to read books and find out the authors who can tell the stories of your students indirectly. So thank you for asking for that question. I wasn't prepared for that, so I'm glad that you just threw a curveball in there for me, because that way I could really tell this this very, very memorable experience. And after that, after I discovered that this is a great way for me to learn about my own students, I started to seek out, such as if I had Korean students, Korean American authors. So each time, or Polish American authors. So I was seeking out renowned fiction authors who had that shared experience, that they came from the countries where my students also came from, but that they settled in the United States. And I was able to look at their lives through the lens of fiction and stories.
Very good. Thank you so much. And all this discussion reminded me of a few instances too. I mean, how important it is to be mindful about who you're talking to and who you're teaching, and to be open-minded to listen to your readers. And here I would like to tell all the audience and attendees that if you happen to read BOOKR Class, then let us know what you think about the content, because your feedback really shapes the product. Because, for example, I remembered a few cases when someone told me that, okay, we have this book about recycling, really nice, all the bins have different colors, but in certain cultures they don't know these color coding yet, because recycling itself is not there yet. So, for example, for me, that was a very good, light. That, oh, hey, something that's very obvious to me might not be that obvious for others. Or one of our books, Adelita, the turtle. Like
that
Hungary,
would be my second example.
Like Hungary, no sea, one big lake, sea life, what's that? We don't know. And for some children, that's reality, growing up by the sea, by the ocean, fishing, crabs, turtles, and so on. And yeah, what you said, Andrea, that it's really important for these students to find themselves in these books. And that's how again literacy comes into the picture of diversity and equity.
Yet what you said, we still have to learn about turtles as well, even if we do not have natural ocean life in Hungary. But books to me have always represented expanding my horizon, that I can visit places, I can go places that I could not be going personally, but through books, I can certainly visit lots of different parts of the world.
Exactly. This is a very beautiful example of how all these topics are really connected, and basically they all strengthen each other.
Indeed.
So the role of technology, we mentioned technology now a lot in technological solutions. The technology in education is constantly evolving. I think we can all agree that especially in the last 2 years, its role was like it saw a really huge growth, and it became even more important. BOOKR Class is also a digital tool crafted specifically for schools. but there are, of course, many other materials, solutions, softwares out there created for educational needs. But I'm always wondering, and we covered this a bit, but not yet enough, do these solutions, technological solutions, really provide better chances for students coming from all different backgrounds with different needs, maybe even speaking different languages?
May I, Andrea?
Yeah, sorry.
Yes, please.
Thank you. So I think that technology is just a must-have in the classroom as well, because technology is dominating our life. Just imagine that our students are younger than Google. So I think this could be a good base for how to think about technology in the classroom, because this is the natural field of the students. And based on many researches, like technology provokes student curiosity, boosts their engagement and imagination, of course, as well, and leads to a better learning and comprehension. And it's proved also that use of digital devices in classroom setting can facilitate faculty-students interaction and in-class participation as well. So, which in turn enhances engagement and active learning, so activity in the classroom as well. And we also conducted our empirical research here in Hungary with the participation of more than 1,000 students in very different schools. So, for example, schools from Budapest, the capital of Hungary, but also in rural schools in very small villages in the countryside. And the Ministry of Education in Hungary sponsored the whole research, and we partnered with 3 universities to make this research super high quality. And the results were just amazing, because our interactive books can sustain the attention in long run, which is, I think, the most important result of this topic, and can successfully incorporate it into the process of education. And my favorite result was that the whole research was a control group based research, so the half of the classroom was studying from our books, and the other half of the classroom received the same content but on paper, so in a static way. And after 3 months, they did the same reading comprehension test, and who were reading with us performed 20% better, because this very reaching environment, the engagement, the interactivity also affected their reading comprehension level. And yes, that's the main result what I wanted to share.
That's really exciting news, because intuitively, I think all educators know that the explicit teaching of grammar structures and some traditional methodologies will no longer hold up with the new generation of learners. So we can't teach the way we were taught when we were students, because the world has evolved so much. And we're referring to our age as the digital age. Even the idea of listening, speaking, reading, writing, the 4 domains, have been stretched and expanded to include viewing and visually representing. So
absolutely.
To prepare our students, as you were referring a couple of times to the 21st century skills, critical thinking, communication, collaboration, and creativity, those four C's. So how do we engage our students through technology in these 21st century, more current expectations for what teaching and learning is all about? And technology is one really powerful answer. It's not going to replace the teacher. I think we have to recognize that our field, our profession is continue to thrive, and we have a critical role in creating or curating the kinds of materials that our students would need to have access to. And also just the notion of more targeted, more student-centered instruction is really, really important for our learners, that they have everything at their fingertips, literally, when they grab their iPads or iPhones or tablets or turn on their laptops. So certainly technology allows us to help build digital citizenship and making sure that our students know how to use digital tools in a
Yes,
both enjoyable way, in an authentic way, but at the same time in a critical way.
Yeah. Yeah, and Andrea, you mentioned collaboration. I think this is what we are missing from BOOKR class right now. So we are working on with our educational team and also with psychologists and the researcher. How can we make reading a collaborative experience for the students? So this would be a new feature in the future, but we explored and that this is a super important feature, and we need to somehow make BOOKR class more collaborative for the students.
You already mentioned many features and characteristics of the potential digital solutions, good digital solutions. I think it would be very interesting to see what you think are crucial in these digital solutions to have. We can focus on digital solutions in general, but if you could mention a few features, characteristics that that you would definitely want to have in these solutions, specifically for English teaching, I think it would be very great, because I think that maybe most of the attendees are here from English teaching area. So Andrea, for example, what do you think is important to have in a good digital solution?
So I'd actually like to connect to the last comment that Darko made, which is your current initiative to make your BOOKR class product more collaborative. And one way that might work is to make it interactive. And that's also the answer to your question, Anna, that when I see that something that's digitally available to the students and they're not passive recipients of what the digital product is giving them, but they can interact meaningfully in a multimodal way. So reading is thinking. Reading is thinking. It's not a passive process. So I'm not just
it's a brain teaser, actually.
So I'm not just on the receptive end and somebody is giving me information or allowing me to enjoy poetry. I'm doing something with it in my mind. And then we think about digital tools or technology tools that that are integrated into the language classroom. That's one feature that I'm looking for. To what degree is it going to be interactive? In what degree is it going to help the learner interact with the material, with their own thinking? So is it going to activate their prior knowledge? Is it going to build on their prior knowledge? Are they able to somehow do something so it becomes more of an active learning experience rather than a passive or receptive learning experience? So that would be my short but very long answer to this question. Go on and on about it. And I think BOOKR class does that. You're doing so many wonderful, there's so many wonderful features that encourage the readers to interact with the material. That's how I discovered you when you told me, like, well, can you just check this out and see what we're doing here? And I was immediately drawn to many features, of course, this product, but especially the interactive feature.
Yeah, interactions in BOOKR class is truly essential. Just back to this research for a minute. We also measure the number of interactions in the books with the students, and it was just incredible that we measured more than 1 million interactions in a week in our books. So it was, wow, they really interacted with the content. They use all of the hotspots, touch-based interactions, but also in the games. They solved all of the games. So the engagement level was super high, and this could be measured by the interactions as well. But if I need to pick one feature, would be the games and the gamification, because gamified learning, I think, is also one of the most important topic or feature in the future of education, because it's not a surprise that games are so appealing for students. So it's just a natural instinct to play, and playing and learning could be the same topic in the future, I think, because that making them perfect partners in the classroom as well, when they see each other like not just students, but somebody with who they can play and learn together. So it would be a new shared experience. And at BOOKR Kids, we can rely on interactive books as games. And the interactive books, as just Andrea mentioned before, facilitate the connection between the reader and the story, and which results in a more profound experience. And I think that I agree with the Lego Foundation. I'm following Lego for a while, not just when buying new bricks for my son, but as a wonderful NGO. And I'm just recommend their research about play and learn in countries, in developing countries, and they just received amazing results when playing can improve these kids' skill a lot.
We received a question which fits here very well. Can you give some examples of gamification? I think both of you, because it's not, I think it's not only maybe in digital tools or not only reading related digital tools. So whatever comes to your mind when thinking about gamification.
Well, the principle of it is that when we infuse games or gamification in our teaching, our learners don't even realize that they are learning very complex skills. They're developing new knowledge because they think that it is a game-like activity that they're truly enjoying, and they get lost in the process. So you can use technology tools. You don't have to use technology tools. We have been playing games for centuries or thousands of years as humans. So it's a very important part of humanity to be able to include learning opportunities which are less stressful. So we're lowering that affective filter that Steve Krashen talks about, and that's going to boost our confidence and engagement with the new learning.
Yeah, and games can induce emotions like curiosity, thrill, and frustration as well, which make a more dynamic learning environment as well. But games can be everything: a reading challenge in the classroom, or playing with flashcards in the BOOKR Class app or beyond, because we are also providing non-screen activities for teachers, because it's also important to combine technology and paper-based activities to make the good balance in the classroom. And like playing a memory with flashcards, or just make a reading challenge in the classroom or in the school could be a very motivating experience for kids.
I have a memory, and I would like to ask you if you think that would be gamification. So my childhood best friend's mom is an English teacher. And whenever we went to her birthday parties, she would teach us these English folk dances to folk songs. And then all these girls, we would go around something like this in their living room and like dancing to these English folk songs. Do you think that's kind of a kind of gamification basically too? Because we were listening to an English song with an English music, and we were dancing, yet we were having a lot of fun.
If it's provide you extra motivation to learn English, yeah, it could be.
It's also connected to the concept of joyful learning, where it's not just to have fun, but you were having fun while you were learning, and you didn't even realize that you were learning. And that's why it's such an important aspect of our pedagogy, to make sure that our students' engagement level becomes high as possible. And we have to use multiple different tools and strategies to achieve that. And gamification definitely is a very powerful way to do so.
And then I believe in digital solutions, gamification can also be coin collection.
Yeah, sure.
Bring further like other worlds by learning, by playful learning. Great. And we had another question that Andrea answered. Thank you for that, about social emotional competence and how we can handle that. Would you like to say a few words about that, or the answer covered it all?
Well,
Great.
it did. I just wanted to share, in my mind, one of the most solid and well-researched frameworks for considering social emotional learning that should be integrated into every class, into language classes as well. And it has 5 components: self-awareness, self-management, responsible decision-making, relationship skills, and social awareness. And you could approach this in a systemic way, or you could think about how each lesson or each unit of study could address one aspect of these social emotional learning skills. So that's a little bit outside of the context of our conversation today, but I thought because technology is at our fingertips, I could just quickly put that link into the into our chat box here and make sure everybody has access to it if you wish to further explore what that framework is.
Thank you. We're getting to the end of our conversation. So again, if anyone has more questions, we would be so happy to see them and receive them in either the chat box or in this Q&A panel down on the bottom of the page or Zoom window. So please feel free to send your questions. And then I would go to my last question. I think. So last but not least, Andrea, one of your main research fields is differentiation, which I believe is extremely crucial in the case of diverse classrooms. Are there any quick tips that you can share with your audience? Any practical suggestions?
Absolutely. So again, I'd like to give first a larger context of how to think about differentiation. I always consider Carolyn Tomlinson as the leading expert on differentiation, who talks about at least 4 ways to consider differentiation. You could differentiate the content, the actual instructional material. You could differentiate the process of learning, so the access points, the types of materials that we're using. We could differentiate the product. How do the students show what they have learned or mastered? Not everybody has to do a cookie cutter final project, or not everybody's going to be writing the same 5-paragraph essay about a topic, but engaging students in multiple different ways to show what they know. And of course, the learning environment, the physical learning environment or the digital learning environment can also be differentiated. So it's content, process, product, and learning environment. But then very specifically, when you asked about, so what can we do to differentiate in the moment, the one tool, the one approach that I always support is scaffolding. So scaffolding is based on Vygotsky's work of just creating that zone of desired development, so that we're giving the right amount of scaffold so that students could try practicing or engaging with the language, and then we remove the scaffolds. So we're supporting them, we're scaffolding them up rather than simplifying the learning. We always look to where are they next on that learning curve, and we're preparing them for that kind of a learning. For example, you could give them a word box. If you're asking them to answer a particular question, you could just give them a word box and say, use some of these words from this word box, or some images, visuals, diagrams, lots of ways that you could prompt the students' participation in a language activity.
Thank you. In the meantime, we received another question, but I think I managed to answer it. But if you can take a look, the author's name for differentiation would be Carol Ann Tomlinson.
Yes,
right? Very good. Thank you. Darko, anything to add to the differentiation?
Yeah, actually, differentiation is also super important in BOOKR class because, as you might know, we are collecting a lot of data. So like statistic data in our system. For example, we can explore which students have difficulties in which book, for example, or who needs a little extra support. And we can recommend teachers for extra materials based on the students' performance. So they can assign different books to different students. And imagine in a classroom, everybody can read a different book based on their current level or based on their previous reading performance. So I think that technology can help a lot in differentiation as well.
Thank you. Like really last but not least, Andrea, your new book that is going to come out in the next couple of months, as far as I know, it focuses on technology. I think it would be interesting for all of us if you could say a few words about that as closing thoughts, and how it is related, or how it can support all the attendees, teachers, educators, English teachers around the world.
Thank you so much. So that book is not yet available on the publisher's website, so we can't give you a link yet. But if you check back with us in a couple of months, it will be available, and it's called Digital Age Teaching for English Learners. And the message here is to recognize the context in which we operate as language educators, and how to create the pathway for our students to engage meaningfully and critically, as well as authentically, with the 6 language domains: listening, speaking, reading, writing, viewing, and visually representing, as we also support their language and literacy development. So that's basically the whole book in a nutshell. And I have 2 co-authors, Lisa Estrada and Heather Fitzpatrick Paris. And I'm just excited that they invited me to be their co-author, just as I'm very honored that you invited me to be on this conversation.
And we can't wait to having your new book, Andrea.
Thank you.
Exactly. Thank you so much for both of you. Dear audience, do you have any more questions? It would be so interesting to hear your thoughts and your feedback. So please, you have a chance now. I can see some raised hands, so I don't know if it's accidental or on purpose, but if you had questions, then I think the best is to quickly write it in the chat or in the Q&A window. I hope you find it. It's in the bottom. Yes, thank you. Thank you. Thank you so much for being here. It's yeah, this one is answered. Great. Sorry, waiting for. Thank you. I found out about BOOKR Class recently, but so happy about it. Thank you so much, Sophia.
And thank you so much, Andrea, again. It was a real honor for us. Thank you so much.
Thank you. My pleasure.
Thank you, everyone. If you have any questions in the future, you know where to find us. And again, don't forget that we have a giveaway. So if you stayed with us until the end, then we would really love to see your main takeaways, your key takeaways from this webinar. Please share them with us and with your followers on Twitter or on LinkedIn using the BOOKR Class for Diversity hashtag and tagging Andrea and BOOKR Class. And if you're one of the lucky ones, then you will receive the From Equity Insights to Action book or a yearly BOOKR Class subscription. So please do share your takeaways on your social media until Friday. And if you have any questions, then don't hesitate to reach out to us too. My email address is anna@bookrkids.hu or .com. You can find me there, and I can, of course, forward your questions to Andrea and Darko. Let me see the chat for last time. No more questions. So thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you so much, everybody.
Thank you, Darko and Andrea again. And let's meet all of you soon. Thank you and have a nice day.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
Bye-bye.